I want to talk some, this is a shorter part, so I think I'll get this done and then hand out the exams. Physical security. Physical security is a set of security measures we put in place to protect people, equipment, and facilities. Physically protect the people, the equipment, the facilities, not logically or digitally or whatever. So like I said, it's protection of physical items, objects, or areas from unauthorized access and misuse, or accidental. Let's put that in there too. Okay, three main categories: people, equipment, data. Many large organizations protect their assets by implementing policies and procedures. They'll have a business continuity planning. How do we keep business running when there's damage or loss to people, property, things? We want to limit our risk, get the organization running as close to normal as possible in a state of emergency, after an attack, after an event. There's disaster recovery planning, preparing for potential disasters, including what exactly to do during and after disaster strikes. We often have what we call tabletop exercises, where they'll walk through, okay, this incident occurred, what do we do? Who's involved? Who gets called? You know, fire, flood, power outage, cyber attack, active gunman, active shooter, you know, lots of different things you can walk through on these. And businesses have these plans. And you've seen some of them, you know, fire drills, active shooter training. I never did active shooter training as a kid. And I was fortunate, I also didn't do the nuclear bomb training. So I went between the two. Nuclear bomb training was duck and cover under your desk, because that'll help you. Physical security threats generally fall into these categories. We'll talk about these: movement, smoke and fire, toxins, people, energy anomalies, extreme temperatures, gases, liquids, living organisms, and projectiles. Notice all of these have nothing to do with direct computer attacks, but they're important. The major sources of physical threats: extreme temperatures, extreme heat or cold, gases, and this includes humidity or dry air, but also, you know, natural gas, poisonous gases, suspended particles, liquids, suspended particles. I should mention that, like flour, suspended flour. Yeah, flour is very explosive. You catch it on fire, and you know that's why some of the grain elevators go up. Liquids, including water and chemicals. Living organisms, viruses, bacteria, animals, insects. Projectiles are the powered objects. Movement we meant by shaking, collapse, a slide, vibrating, so earth movements. Energy anomalies: electrical surge, static electricity, radiation, and then people, toxins, smoke and fire. So we have to protect ourselves with this. We use physical security controls, systems, devices, people, methods to ensure the security. There are two types, major types, this you need to know. There are deterrent controls and detective controls. And then the third type, three types, sorry, preventative controls. Deterrent controls discourage people from violating the security. We'll give some examples of these. Detective, we detect somebody's violating things. And preventive, we stop them from doing it. So, you know, kind of obvious definitions. So you want to protect the house. What do, right? Deterrent control, detective control, preventative control, right? Deterrent control, alarm company, beware of dogs, smile, you're on camera, you know, discourage people from violating the security controls. They don't prevent people from doing anything. They just warn them if they do something, they're going to get caught. Okay, and that's the goal of a deterrent. You know, laws are deterrents. If you're caught, you're going to be punished. That's a deterrent. You know, fines, but the signs like these too. You know, we have an alarm, we have a dog, etc. Detective controls actually sense and report it. So you actually have that camera, you actually have that dog, or a guard, and you know they can detect when somebody's breaking into the system, when somebody's doing something. Smoke alarms are a detective control. How good are they? They're good at detecting. A dog's better. My son is better, apparently. Another story. So one day, my son's downstairs. We have, and two-story house. The main floor is upstairs. We have a daylight basement. He comes upstairs and he's like, I smell something. Actually, so one tells the other, I smell something. I smell smoke. Go check it out. So the one who smelled it is downstairs checking. The other one goes up the stairs. Comes to the top of the stairs. He looks to the left. Now, at the top stairs, looking to the left, you look right into our kitchen, right under our dishwasher, and there were flames. So the motor underneath our dishwasher had caught fire. So he's like, Dad, the dishwasher's on fire. I'm like, what? So I get down and I see the flames. I'm like, okay, grab out my fire extinguisher. Now, what's one thing you need to do with a fire extinguisher? Make sure it's up to date. Pull out the plug and nothing. We keep fire extinguisher under the kitchen sink, but it was defunct. So like, well, that's useless. Max, what do I do? By the way, smoke alarm. There's not one directly in the kitchen because you burn things, but one just in the hallway outside the kitchen. No problem yet. So I grab some water. I'm about to splash the water, and then my son is like, Dad, that's electrical. I was like, you're right. My wife by then is on the phone, says, I'm calling 911. I said, yeah. So she calls 911. Now, we're in a rural town, right? Volunteer fire department. Which, no, actually, I was shocked. So within minutes, the first responding vehicle, not the actual fire truck, but the little pickup truck or whatever comes out there. We're all out of the house. He's walking up. What's going on? He steps on our driveway. Then the smoke alarm went off. I said, we got a fire. He said, okay, anybody in the house? No. Any pets? Just a turtle in the water. We're good. So, we tell them what's going on. Fire truck pulls up, they go in. Now the dishwasher obviously had been running. They find that I show them where the circuit breaker is. They show off the circuit breaker. That would have been a good idea. Show off the circuit breaker, open the dishwasher, take out the rack of dishes. They did spray it with their fire extinguisher, unscrewed the dishwasher, pulled it out of the house, put it in my driveway, didn't break a single dish. I love the Moscow Fire Department. They're really good. And then tore apart the dishwasher because the insulation inside was on fire. This thing would have spread if we'd not been home. I never run my dishwasher now when I leave the house. We bought a different brand. But yeah, so my son has a really good sense of smell. That one does. The other one has no sense of smell. I think I know where it went. Dogs detect these things. Smoke detectors, no. So you got your controls. Your detector controls have to be appropriate. That's what I'm getting to. Sorry, side story, but it was fun. Preventative controls. Hey, put a barrier up, put a fence up, lock the door. Sprinkler system like these, as opposed to just the smoke detectors, help prevent things, stop things. Okay, so these are the three different. No smoking sign, smoke detector, sprinkler system. All right. The physical security, again, I just talked about this. Set of measures we put in place to protect our people, equipment, facilities, people, equipment, data. Now, here's one. You're in a data center, computers going on. What happens when there's a fire? What do you do to put out the fire? Suffocated. You don't spray water on that computer equipment. You suffocate it. Argon gas, right? Get the oxygen out of the room. Flood it with argon gas. Oh wait, there's people in that room. The first thing you do is you tell the people, there's flashing lights or whatever, get out of the room. We're about to suffocate you. These are things you have to think about. The primary goal of physical security is first to protect the people. It's much easier to replace that data center than the people, in my mind. So what concerns we have? Extreme temperatures, don't burn them up, don't freeze them out. Living organisms, larger animals to nearly invisible molds, fungi, things can affect those people. Significant movement, earthquakes, mudslides, etc. Other people physically attacking you. You want to be protected from them, smoke and fire. These are the most concerns we have for physically protecting the people. There are other things too, if they're in, depending where they are. So I worked in a factory after my first year in college where we had a bunch of saws, we're cutting wood. There's things in there that were dangerous, saws, the nail power guns. I don't know how many times during that summer somebody shot themselves with a nail power gun because they're trying to go in from the side and they miss and boom. Sometimes it wasn't the guy doing it, but the guy on the other side of the wood. These are things, and there are policies and procedures in place and equipment in place, but people still make mistakes. So you try to protect them as much as you can. During an emergency, you should prioritize evacuating people from this facility, not saving the equipment. Like I said, the argon gas, get the people out of the room first before you pump it in. Plan evacuation procedure is one of the best ways to keep people safe. Know where you'll be evacuating to. I was on a meeting yesterday for IRIC. I'm on the IRIC safety committee, and they were talking about how we're going to train people on the emergency evacuation. Where do they congregate? And the policy is each lab has a place where everybody in that lab should meet. And everybody, you should know who was in the lab. Okay, now they're all meeting here. How many people were in the lab? We had 5 people in the lab. Are there 5 people here? What route do you follow? And sometimes it's more than one route because it depends what's going on. How many exits? We go out this door. How many ways can we get out this building?
On this floor, probably.
On this floor, what?
Probably like 3 or 4.
I know of 2 for sure. The 2 main ones. I don't know if there's another one back in the corner there. I know we can go down the stairs and out, and there's 3 exits out that way. 3? 2 at least that I know of. I think there's a 3rd one.
There's the side one to the parking lot.
Yeah, it goes to the parking lot. There's a door that way to that parking lot, and then there's the loading dock.
Oh yeah.
So if the floor's blocked but the stairs are good, we go down the stairs and out. People upstairs, they got to come down the stairs first or out the window. These windows don't open. That makes it a little harder. Then we ensure everybody's out of the building. What if this was in the training we had Wednesday? What if I know somebody should be in my lab, was in my lab, they're not out of the building? What do? I find the emergency responders, I tell them. I do not go back in the building and say, my student, sorry. Okay, how about the data? That's an important resource. We want to protect that. We can use encryption to protect our data. That's good from theft, which is a physical movement of things. We need to keep the physical storage media safe against attackers, unfavorable environmental conditions, and other threats. Magnetic media, strong magnetic fields can harm hard drives, tapes, floppy disks, if you even know what a floppy disk is these days. Optical media, the CDs, DVDs are fragile. They can be broken. Magnetic media, I know there was backup tapes. This was years ago at Lawrence Livermore National Lab. And they were doing what they needed to do, testing that the backup tapes actually worked. We had that problem once where our sysadmin wasn't testing. For a year, we were backing up things apparently on a corrupted device. So we had no backups for a year. We found that out after the system went down. Fortunately, he had a secondary backup, but he didn't do that as frequently. So we lost a month's worth of work. Everybody, students, everybody, a month's worth of stuff was gone. So was he afterwards. But with the Lawrence Livermore, they had the backup tapes and they kept being corrupted. Well, they were storing them on the bottom shelf of a metal cabinet. The custodian was coming in and cleaning, waxing the floor with this big metal drum thing that spins around to wax the floor. And that causes a magnetic field that demagnetizes the tapes enough to corrupt them. You want to preserve your sensitive data by maintaining copies in physically separated locations, by the way. Oh, here's my important data next to the server. There's a fire. They're both gone. You know, there's a lot of offsite backup storage for companies. And what the problem is then it's physically transferred so that that truck can be robbed. That's why you encrypt it first before you send it off.
Is the idea of multiple backups in like maybe a few different mediums like a good idea too? Like a cloud base or like hard copy?
Actually, yes. Yeah, cloud-based services are really good. And then you could also have your own physical. I'm trying to figure that out right now. So my wife was reminding me she wanted backups of all the family photos. Why? A couple years ago, her sister's house burned down in the fire in Santa Rosa. You know, they had 15 minutes to evacuate their lot, you know, basically pack up everything that's important to you and get out. But fortunately, we had lot of photos and other things that we sent them copies of. My brother-in-law is an artist. He drew family Christmas cards every year. My wife kept those. We sent them back, every one of those Christmas cards we had received for the last 25 years. So they like didn't even think about that as one of the many things they lost, but that was cool. But my wife's like, we need a backup of this. So where do I back it up? I got 125 gigabytes of videos and pictures. Blu-ray discs, 25 gigs each. Okay, I did them on Blu-ray. I put them on a thumb drive because I can buy a 256 gig thumb drive and put it all there. And then there's cloud storage. So where do I back it up? All three. I don't know how long thumb drive storage lasts. Do I have to plug it in once a year to make sure it has the power in it? Does it die? I have no idea.
There's something like that. I think it's less than like 5 years.
Yeah, there's something they don't know for sure because I Googled it. Blu-ray can decay.
Yeah.
Cloud storage, they can go out of business.
I bought like a storage thumb drive recently that had its own like locker software or application within it. And I'm not sure if that made it last longer or not.
I have no idea. Yes, the pre-built-in software, I don't know. If you're not plugging it in, I mean, it's an electric charge. Does that charge dissipate? You know, things that people have to think about when they're doing businesses. Sometimes data reaches the end of its lifespan. Do we delete it? If we do, what happens to the media that contains it? College of Engineering recently been going through a lot of surplusing of old stuff. I dealt with getting rid of 12 hard drives from old computers that were more than 10 years old. But there's FERPA data on there. There's other stuff on there. What do? You know, what we did is first I made sure we didn't need the data. Then I reformatted the drive, and then I did a secure wipe. And then we handed off to somebody who drills 2 holes in the drive and then crushes them. We're not allowed to sell them or give them up because people can still recover even if you've done the secure wipe. But we wanted. So, you know, what do people do? Burning. Sorry, stories. NSA was doing, National Security Agency was doing an experiment. Let's do a burn, right? Where they had a pit and they were gonna do a flash burn of everything. And they threw some electronic equipment in there and stuff, but some of it was explosive. And so they had that with papers. And suddenly there was a plume of explosion and these unburnt papers spreading all over the Baltimore area. And so a whole bunch of NSA interns and agents were combing the area, picking up all these papers. Fortunately, nothing was top secret because this was an experiment. But burning is a very common high temperature incinerator, usually for paper records. They may support electronic devices. Electronic devices, when they burn, usually put off poisonous chemicals. So you have to be careful. Shredding. So, you know, university has a shred service. We have a shred bin I can put in FERPA related stuff, confidential contract stuff. I'm not supposed to shred it myself. So I put it in there. We have a truck that comes by. They take that, they dump it in the shredder. They immediately shred it. Pulping, break it down into wood pulp, remove the ink, pulverizing things, very, very small pieces, or degaussing, magnetically wiping, electromagnetically wiping magnetic material. All these things, you want to destroy the data. You want to make sure it's gone from everything. So we had a contract, that company I did the tailgating into. We had a contract with them and we were required at the end of the contract to delete everything we had. And so we all knew the whole time of the contract which computers had any access to their data. We had disabled thumb drive access to those machines, disabled external device access. It was on a private isolated network. Everything came in one way into the network. I brought it in, we physically plugged in the hard drive, moved it, or not the drive, the DVD drive, whatever, copied everything over, physically removed it, destroyed the external media, did everything. And then there was a done, it was wipe, destroyed. It was annoying. No paper copies, no printouts, nothing, you know. Then they canceled the project almost halfway. You want to protect your equipment and the facilities that house it. You know, extreme temperatures, again, could be a problem for a house. Liquids, living organisms, they chew on wirings. Schweitzer ran into that problem one time. Schweitzer Engineering Laboratories in Pullman builds protective devices for the power grid. And they got a call from a company in South America, may have been Mexico, I'm not sure, or Central America, South America, saying, you know, we have this device in our power substation and it keeps shorting out. So they open up the cabinet and there's all these cockroaches chewing on the board. And apparently they put a sealant to protect the board from extreme humidity that was yummy to the cockroaches, which they didn't realize, so they had to change this. Again, yes.
I was in Hawaii this past, I think June, and they, because of COVID, they put all of their like rental vehicles in the field, and so half their fleet had chewed up wires, which is why it was so expensive to get one.
Okay, so you were in Hawaii, all their vehicles chewed up wires because they put them in a field
Put them
instead
in
of.
the field. Because of COVID, no one was there, so they couldn't do anything with the cars. And so
Right, so all the cars were not being rented, they were all, and they had no room to put them. Got it. Lovely. And you don't think about these things. Yes. Energy anomalies, loss of power, electrical surges, lightning strikes. Loss of power is an important one. Did I tell about my dad's American Express thing? So he was consulting for American Express and he said their main processing facility, I did this in another class. First, it was on a hill to avoid floods. It was connected to two different power utilities. It was like on the border between one. So if one utility had power problems, hopefully the other one would work. They then had battery backups for their devices and then generators that they could power up and run for 3 days. And the telecommunications setup was completely independently powered too. So if there was a power outage, you know, hurricane, whatever caused them days of problem, because this was in Atlanta, they would still be up and running processing your credit cards. Because that's where they earn their money. And if they're not processing your credit cards, they lose money. So they made sure they had multiple layers of backups and protection to fire and smoke and redundancy off site and all these different things. He said it was amazing. But it makes sense when you think about it. So yeah, when you're picking a site selection, planning a new facility, physical location with controls designed to minimize risk of physical attack. Don't build a nuclear power plant on a earthquake fault line. Hello, East Coast. They did on a couple, they didn't know there were fault lines. Don't build it in a floodplain. So apparently Boise, we did a study with them 20 years ago or something. The National Institute of Advanced Transportation Technologies here did it. And the major transportation control network was backed up by their power grid, so they had to have the power grid up and running. Well, that was in the floodplain. So if you had a flood in the Boise area, you're going to lose power for a very long time because the control center would be flooded out. They actually, based on that study showing this interconnected, they built it up out of the floodplain or built a new one. So they realized, yeah, that was a bad idea. It was just a convenient building at the time, but nobody thought about it. We had people actually looking at places where there's interconnections. You get power and rail and maybe natural gas pipelines all crossing each other at the same place. Happens a lot in major port areas. There are places where a fire in the natural gas pipeline will take out your power and take out a rail line, take out a highway. major evacuation highway, et cetera. And people got to look at these. So site selections really matter. Natural terrain, traffic flow, security landscaping. You want to secure access to your equipment or your facilities. Proper level of security inside and outside the facility. Where are your backups stored? Where's your main computers? Where are your people? How do your people get access, et cetera? Defense in depth, different layers, different things. Fences, gates, walls, alarms, monitoring systems, guards, doors, locks. All those are important, depending on the level. If you go top secret level stuff, you need to be a tempest. Basically, protect you from electromagnetic radiation. You don't want electromagnetic signals from your monitor going out the walls because somebody can monitor those and figure out what's showing on your screen. Also don't have windows so they can just look through. The Tempest facilities are, so I was in one at one place. It was basically a giant vault. We weren't actually doing anything classified. We were just having a meeting in there, so they kept the door open. But they would, for the secure meetings, they would close that door. And it's like, just even with the door open, my cell phone wouldn't work, nothing would work. Actually, we weren't even allowed to bring our cell phones in, let's be honest. Everything electronic had to be left with the guard. I would hate to work in one of those places. Man traps. So basically, we got a guard station, like our computer room. And it's like an airlock, but it's basically people can come in one way. They are then identified by the guard. If authorized, they're allowed to enter. If not, the doors are locked. They can't get past the guard, and yet they're not supposed to be there. Doors will lock on both sides. They do this in the higher security facilities.
In South Africa, in banks, they have something like that where you walk into a room and first there's a door and the thing turns green on the door lock. You open the door, you walk inside, it closes, and then once it turns red, then the other one turns green, and you can go through. Right.
So same type of thing in banks in South Africa. Is that to get to the safety deposit boxes or the vault vault?
No, it's for regular.
For regular customers, okay. You walk in, hey, red light, you wait, they close the door behind you, you're good, green. What happens if you're not good? So yeah, make sure nobody's coming in with a gun. Hey, you can't get into the building with your gun, you can't rob the bank. And again, what level of security, what is that needed or not, depending where you are. And the contextual, like on the example, right? I did things as a kid I would never have let my kids do. I hopped on the light rail equivalent, the high speed line, and took it from near my house over to downtown Philadelphia. And my mom's only constraints were you don't go south of this street, north of this street. You stay in this block, the shopping district. She actually worked there, so we would go visit her. But I was 12, 13. And she had one other rule too. You don't get off in Camden, and you don't talk to anybody who gets on the train from Camden. Camden was a crime center there, and we had to go through Camden on this. Camden, New Jersey. But I wouldn't let my own 12-year-old hop on a high-speed line, go 20 miles away from home by himself. I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't do that. I was all over the place as a kid. Seemed to be safer back then. Contextual matters, but depends where. And that was in South Jersey. Here probably I'd still let them do that type of thing. Well, they wouldn't go 20 miles away from home. Nothing's 20 miles away from home. But you wouldn't. There are things that different environment, different neighborhoods. All right, systems rely on sensors for event detection, motion detectors, smoke detectors, thermal detectors, glass breakage detectors, weight, contact sensors, other things. So alarms and alarm systems notify an organization when an event occurs. And this is physical security. We'll talk about this also with electronic security. Electronic monitoring records events where other types of physical controls are impractical. But this electronic physical monitoring, so cameras with video recorders. These are reactive. They don't prevent access to facility or property damage. They detect things. They then warn somebody if they detect something, but they can't do something. It's not shooting 10,000 volts down the line. Recordings are often not monitored in real time, but reviewed to have any value. Oh, something bad happened. Who did it? Let's go find out. Motion recognition cameras activate just when motion occurs. There are rules and regulations. So in different buildings on campus, we do have cameras in place in the hallways. We are not allowed to put them in faculty offices. We are not allowed to put them in the labs without explicit permission. They are there for your safety, not for me to decide who to spy on. I can't say, hey, I want a camera in the lab so I can see if my students are really working. You know. Protecting equipment, environmental conditions. You want to maintain proper environmental conditions, temperature, humidity, power. You need to detect it. You have to have a thermostat or thermometer in there to tell you if the power it's getting too hot. Add in power filtering and generation. So the IRIC building, there's a set of power lines in there that are on battery backup and are filtered so you don't get the surges. You don't have to put a surge protector in every room because they're built into the building. You want to control the temperatures. So physical security, summary, set of security measures we put in place to protect our people and facilities. It's a protection of physical items, objects, or areas from unauthorized access and misuse. It involves protection of three main categories: assets, people, equipment, data. Now, I want to see if I can actually do this. I may not. I don't think I can share screen on Zoom with the doc cam on. No, I can't. So, all right, Zoom people, I can't share this. I should just may as well stop the recording. Because I don't have this readily available. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little about the exam results. And I was going to share it. I guess I could do it this way too. Hold it up this way. So there's like a histogram of this. And so on this side, actually I got a better breakdown, more detailed. So there's 90%, there's 80%, around here 70%, average was 76%. So I wanted to say a couple things about this. I'll talk more about that later where I have to do it on the slides. The way the scores and the grading is set up for the class, there's 1,000 points possible, the exam's 100. So this whole exam is 10% of your grade. 10 points on this exam is 1% of your grade. Okay, so you lost 2 points here or 3 points here. It's not the end of the world. Even the people who got down at the 50% area, if you got perfect and everything else in this class, your score is still 95%. Okay, so it's not in the end of the world. If your grades are low. If your grades are really good, you're way up there in the 98, 99% area. Doesn't mean you can slack off because you still got the rest of the class to deal with. Like I said, the average was 76. The median was 78. I usually shoot for around an 80, so it wasn't too bad. I was off by 5 points, 4 points. Normally, and this is where it's going to get hard to share. Normally, when at the end of the semester, when I'm grading, I'll just do it this way. What I'll do is I'll look at something like this, and I'll say, okay, here's a natural gap. These are probably the A's. Here's a natural gap, so those will be the B's. Here's a natural gap, so those will be the C's. Something like that. At the same point, I will never tell you, we have the minimum, 70%, 80%, 90%. You know, if you're above 80%, you're guaranteed to be. No matter if the whole class is above 80%, you know, you're guaranteed to be. But I'm gonna look at this and I'm gonna see these natural gaps and say, okay, there is a natural gap, but hey, guess what? That ends at 78%. And then there's a gap. Well, maybe that 78 and up deserve to be. Now, generally what I like to do on these tests, I hope for half the class to get A's and B's, which is, so 24 out of the people who took the test. If that one I was showing you, actually I'll do this one. If I look at this one, right, there's 3 people up here in the 90s and 26 people in this area. So there's 29 people past this natural gap. If I broke it this way though, you see there's actually a little gap here. That makes 20 people here oops, 20 people here and then those extra 9 in this group. And this becomes, I'm not sure what to do with those 9 if this was the end of the semester, depending on how I looked at it. Are they Bs or Cs? You know, and I'll figure that out when we get there. So anyway, that said, the way I set up this test, I'm actually a little disappointed. Normally I give less points per multiple choice question than I did this test. The reason why is I took this from something I had that was a 200-point test and reduced it to a 100-point test, but I didn't reduce the points on the multiple choice. They were 5 points on the 200-point test, so each one's worth 2.5% of the grade instead of 5% of the grade. So you miss 1, you lose 5%. Miss 2, you lose a letter grade. That's what brought the whole thing down, that extra 5 points. But in the long run, it's going to flush out. Okay. All right. I'm going to hand these out. You can look at them. I got to figure out how to hand them out. And for the video students in Coeur d'Alene, you'll get your copy soon. I will pause this.